I now call to order the April 15th, 2024 City Council meeting. If we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Maggie, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Sons. Here.
Here.
Dolby.
Here.
Armstrong.
Here.
Speed. Here. Richardson.
President.
Mayor Erickson.
Present. Moving on to item 4 is public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on anything not on the agenda this evening? Now would be the time to come forward and state your name and address. Seeing none, moving on to the consent agenda. Can I get a first and second motion? Well, first off, I'm sorry. Is there any items that should be pulled first? No. Can I get a first and second motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Ben, you just want to give us a quick recap?
Yep, consent agenda is on the screen right there. It's also provided in our agenda packet. We're providing those electronically and in print form for the public that's in attendance. Any questions that the council has on the consent agenda?
Seeing none, we'll move on to council report. Can I get a first? Oh, I'm sorry, Jackie.
Councilmember Richardson.
Aye.
Sons. Aye. Ray.
Aye.
Dolby.
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
Beach.
Aye. Now moving on, can I get a first and second motion to receive and follow the February 2024 treasurer's report?
Moved.
Are there any questions? We have our distinguished treasurer here this evening, Doug Schultz.
I see we have one count. Two counts. Over our 100%, is that something that we it's community betterment and general government buildings, just means that we spent 112% of our budget so far.
We're anticipating a budget amendment, which is on the agenda, for public hearing for year-end closeout to take care of those.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on, discussion and direction regarding automatic sprinkler systems and Group S storage occupancies. Chia.
Mayor and Council, Greg Chia, Fire Chief. We've been presented with some questions from the builder for this development. And in your packets, there were some responses. It was a collaborative response from both community development and in the process of, we're on the 2018 International Fire Code, which is very specific that it says because of upholstered products that we would need buildings to be sprinkled. In the past, we have never diverted from altering the code unless there was a utility deficiency that would not meet the standard. With that being said, we're also in the process of working on adopting the 2024 code. We were on a 6-year cycle. So with us being on the 2018, we will bypass the 2021. And I think the question from the builder is on the 2021 code, where it didn't eliminate, which is number 5, which is the upholstery and the requirement for that. It just moved it to a different area in the code. That process still takes a while. That will start next year in 2025 to adopt the 2024 code. And hopefully we'll have that completed by the end of 2025. As you look, the plan here, I believe there's 18 buildings in storage. That was one of the references why I put in an article, and if you look at the date on that article as you read it, that was something that was recent. That was in the last month and a half that article came out. The answers, in our answers, if you look at or have read those, there are some alternatives that we had suggested. If they did not want to put in the sprinkler, and I think those are legitimate alternatives. From there, I entertain any questions.
What's the cost for a sprinkler system?
Depends. Commercially, it's anywhere from $5 to $8 a square foot. That goes off the region. Off of, we're in the region that incorporates the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois.
What's the exception for one building or
The whole project.
project, and it would not, it's an exception for this building project only? Or would it change?
Well,
It's-
once you make that decision, that opens it up.
Right, that's.
Yes.
That's my concern is we're setting a precedence.
You will be.
Right.
Chief, will the 24 code have similar requirements to the 18 code?
What it has done is it's separated some of that, and there's even a piece in there specific to just upholstered furniture. With that being said, so next year, the process will be for community development with the IBC and fire with the IFC to make any changes prior to it going into being passed and accepted. I can tell you that in the 2018 code, and this is just an example, there was an additional 14 pages of changes that were made. We are members of Central Iowa Consortium, so we try to emulate or make the standards that we adopt here also similar to the metro.
Does that other storage unit on East Hillcrest, does it have sprinklers on it or inside of it?
No.
It's that because it's so small that it doesn't meet the requirement.
It was before I was here. Now, there was an addition that was put in there and they did put in firewalls.
Any other questions?
Is that a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour firewall? 2 hour. Then, so what you're saying then essentially is that the 2004 code kind of puts back into, if I read correctly, Chief, or maybe I'm getting correct here, the 21 code made some changes, but it did move it to that other section that you were mentioning.
Correct.
Based on the 24 code, just going to pick it up from there.
Yeah, and there is, you know, it has it in as an exception.
Right.
So do you think the 24 code will continue to have that verbiage about the upholstery, or you think it'll?
No, it does. It does. It's already out there.
Oh, okay.
And so firewalls are okay alternative to the sprinkler system?
And are they proposing that they have to do, I guess, so I'm confused. So they want to not use sprinklers
Right.
and you gave them the other options.
Alternatives, yes.
Are they not wanting to do those either?
I can't answer that.
We are here.
Okay.
discuss or do I need to?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. If you'd like to come forward and
Okay,
answer that question, absolutely. Just give us your name and your address.
Address,
Yep, perfect.
Peter Corcoran, Winterset, Iowa. Do you need more specific? Okay, he did give us some more specifics about fire walls, but also said that did not alleviate. Everything had to have sprinkler above 2,500, right?
Way the code reads,
Yeah,
yes.
so firewalls, we were fine doing firewalls. Our problem was the water, brings an issue of insurance liability. I mean, there's no foolproof way that water or chemicals does not spray on people's stuff if it were to malfunction. And we're trying to alleviate that. Our big question is majority of all facilities, I would say all of them in Indianola are currently built to what we're trying to build them. We didn't think we would have any issue. We're building with these where it's zoned correctly. And we were gonna build them to the same standard that I would say 99% of facilities in Indianola in most cities are allowing them to be. We didn't think this would be a tough issue. In that article also, if you got into some details about people dying in the fireplace, our facilities are gonna be state of the art with access codes, gates, cameras. We're gonna know who's coming and going. Those fires were caused by homeless people living in facilities, starting propane heaters to keep warm. I don't think that's gonna be a case that we have. One of our contractors that we use builds these all over the nation. And I asked him this last week, I'm like, have you replaced any of these due to fire? He's like, I've never once replaced one due to fire. Something that really light up on fire ever.
Well, I would beg to differ on that. I mean, that's what I do for a living.
Okay.
And I know as much as we like to think people won't try to live in their storage units, it happens quite frequently, even down here. And just within the last 3 years up in Des Moines, there was a storage facility that completely went up. So I mean, the fires are a real concern. It doesn't matter how much you monitor.
Yeah.
You know, we've got state of the art, you know, gates, code entries, cameras, and they still find ways to bypass that. So just letting you know. But so you guys are okay with doing the firewalls? You just are asking for an exception on the sprinkler.
Right. It becomes, if we were to not be able to do the firewalls, we would likely knock the square footage down to be under that 2,500, and then you have a lot more buildings, and then our, cost goes up just because efficiencies, go down.
Any other questions for the developer?
And does our code require a sprinkler? So the facility we built a couple years ago up in Urbandale, they required that we have a sprinkler in every single unit up there.
Yes.
So is that what this code is also?
Yes.
And,
I'm not gonna. I'm gonna interrupt.
no,
you for a second.
I want to go along with it, but I'm not going to be details on this.
So when you say you got a secured site, it's truly not secured because then we still have unregulated storage. So if we go through, and we could probably do it right now, we've got hazardous materials, you've got flammable materials that, whether they're furniture, upholstered or not. And those are the things, and then with the type of construction, it doesn't take long for those to fail. If they're exposed to heat. Then that puts not only my people in danger, than anybody else. And what we have seen, and when I have talked to the fire marshals and the Metro, and even a couple of them, Waterloo and Cedar Falls. So those were the ones that had adopted the 2021 code. They have made alterations to that And I'll use West Des Moines as an example. So the distance between their buildings now is a lot larger than what is required.
Chief Chia, do you know if these international building codes that you're talking about, are these the same international building codes that county is currently considering for Warren County? I would imagine if they want to go to international.
If it's the international, if it's the IBC, yes, it'd be
Yes.
the same one.
I would
Now,
assume they would take the.
now the version, it depends on the version.
Sure, okay.
And that's the other thing, and I can use as an example, we use fireworks. So to make it more palatable for the vendors that you did on the fireworks, the state adopted the 2006.
A couple of questions for you. The firewall is divided, you want a 2-hour firewall, how many square feet does that divide it into then? Sorry, I didn't,
No, that's fine.
yeah.
You'd have to just create two separate buildings, basically, to have one firewall down the middle.
So you just have like 1,200 square feet or something like that, somewhere in the neighborhood, yeah.
So I'm sorry, so like on the small buildings, the 140 by 25 at 3,500 square foot, so you're talking about just running a firewall right in the middle? And is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, dividing them up into square footage of 1,000 square foot or less. That would, or pods rather. So just depending on the size of the building is.
So you got firewalls to go running east, west, and north and south in order to break off a certain square footage.
Yeah, basically, it's just right down the middle for the most part.
Okay.
And that would extend through the roof then, is obviously.
And I'm assuming these are gonna be set up as actual like storage units with multiple different sizes. It's not gonna be like flex warehouse
Correct.
type sizes. Okay. Are you guys gonna have staff on site?
Right now, we're tinkering some, but not full-time, but majority of the time, yes.
Will there be plugins in each unit?
No, we do not allow outlets nor lights in them. So the conduit that I think was referenced, all lighting will be on the exterior with conduits, so there won't be any outlets or anything in there. We have sometimes an approach to allow for a cleaning company at some point in time. We will, we do one for them, but they would have a much longer lease and we'd know exactly which ones they were using, and they would likely be plugging in rechargeable batteries for something like that, and that would be about it.
Well, that's right up where I was headed with this too, is I don't know if those are lithium batteries or what they are, but I have a real concern about unattended lithium batteries.
2024 addresses lithium
Yeah,
batteries
I know they do.
specifically.
And I don't know if anybody's seen the fire from the testing labs from Warnock Hersey or any of the labs about, you know, how fast those go up and what they do cause and the heat they're causing too. So I do have a little concern with that. I think from my perspective, folks, I think we need to keep the 2018 code as it stands. And I think that it doesn't make any changes according to what Chief is saying for 24. It puts us out to 2030 in this. And that we have to do that simply from the fact that I think we need to keep it safe for everybody. I know it's a cost to the developer, but I think it's got to happen.
Much more of a cost is it going to be to you, sir, to add a firewall?
I'm more worried, firewalls like we can do. I'm more worried about the ruining of people's stuff by spraying chemicals and dry stuff onto their stuff and having the liability of ruining stuff.
So, but if we had the firewall,
Firewall, I would be fine with.
we don't have to have a sprinkler if we.
Right. You know, I've been told I gotta have a sprinkler with firewalls even. Anything above 2,500 has to have a sprinkler.
Is that once we adopt that code, or is that our current?
No.
It's the current,
Sure.
okay.
So we're fine with doing some firewalls and making that so that it would be compartmentalized to stay in that area.
I think when comparing it to the other facilities in town, most of the ones here in town were built prior to those codes.
I agree.
You know, and the ones that have been built recently were built under scale, you know, so they weren't in that requirement. I have a hard time saying, you know, let's not require it, but we're gonna require it of everybody else.
That's kind of where I am too.
Being not being builder friendly, right? I also understand trying to maintain safety and rules and regulations using certain codes.
Oh, but I'm sorry, Ronnie.
Go ahead, Steve.
So you're concerned about liability, but, and I don't know about other storage units, but anytime I rented a storage unit or anything, I made sure my homeowner's insurance covered those kinds of things. Why, I don't understand, I guess from that perspective, as a fire in your facility, why I mean, of course, you'd be sued for anything, I get that. Right. I don't understand why your liability would pertain to that if there's a fire in somebody else's facility and they should have their own insurance.
We would cover it too, but we're just trying to think of mitigating versus scenario.
I understand that, and I certainly appreciate that too. I guess I think that from a standpoint of more, and I don't know chemicals, it's just gonna all be water, correct? There's no foam or anything involved here, correct?
Water.
Need water.
No, it'd be a dry agent. Our facilities are not heated or
Not heated or insulated, so you can still go with.
Yeah, but the majority of them are chemical ones that we could do.
That's your choice to go with the chemical. Yeah.
Chief Chia, I'm sorry, but coming back to the financial question, did we ever, did I miss that? What did you say, $5?
I think you said what, $5 to $10 roughly a square foot?
Yeah.
So like on that,
On the commercial side.
on the small building, then that's 3,400 square foot, you're looking at 17,000 roughly, right? And then I mean, that's gotta be, and that's calculated at the $5, so that's probably at the low end, but it'd be a substantial impact for sure.
I don't believe it would cost that much for,
Yeah, that's
that's a little,
steep, but
that's more for like an educational building. Business.
so what would come in is if our protection engineer would design the system based off of the construction type and the building itself.
You've gotten quotes and you're performing all this stuff, what this would actually cost your project specifically?
It'd be to the point where we'd probably not even do it.
I mean, I respect, listen to everyone's commentary and questions. I respect that be friendly. Or forces you proposed, this is what we've had 2018, pretty widespread. It's not abnormal for us to be on 2018. Maybe looking at switching at this time, a lot of times you jump years on code like that. I respect that you want something different to bring to table. I think it was a known thing right out front, and I don't think it's a precedent that we want to set personally across town just yet.
The 2024 code will require it in each unit as well.
It does at 25 minutes. What he is making reference to is still separated out with the upholstered at 2,500 square feet.
I wasn't aware of it 2024. I just went to the next 3 years
Okay.
and noticed that it had, so if I went back, I think 2012 allowed it, 2015 and 2018 are current what you guys have, and then 2021 went back and changed it to where it's allowing for these facilities to be built this way. Up to 12,000 square feet. We don't feel like we're trying to push that threshold. We're staying in that 4,000 to 5,000 square feet.
Just removed it as a condition requiring sprinkler systems from the 18 to the 20.
As long as, I think that if I am reading into their intentions, which I probably shouldn't do, it said anything that was accessed only from the outside. So doors were only on the outside. There was no interior wall walkways, and that's how we're designing our facility. So if And I'm not a fire person, but if you were coming to put a fire, you're not gonna go into the building, and that's what we took it as, okay. It can be put out without endangering any lives.
I'm gonna disagree with that because it doesn't get put out unless we go in.
I have one more question, sorry. So, and does that change if the building material changes? So, like, if it's an all metal structure?
Typically, storage units are type 2B, which is real thin channel tubing, which is susceptible to heat. So the construction type would just have to change to like a type 2A. They'll have to be protected.
Different structural stud.
The other thing is that with Indianola being, so far away from the metro, all the other metro cities, they rely on some of the other fire departments to be able to respond if they're not. We're kind of out in a rural area to where we don't have anybody else to depend on, except for Norwalk. So a sprinkler system would help alleviate that.
I know that one facility that went up over by Altoona, the whole thing was just burnt to the ground. Bad.
Actually, I do.
Okay.
So in the very beginning, I asked a question. I just want to clarify. You posed an alternative of firewalls. You're saying that firewalls alone do not meet code, correct?
Our current code, this still has to be sprinkled. So what a sprinkler system just,
Needs to be both.
it reduces the amount of firewalls that you'd have to have. So
So if I did sprinklers, I wouldn't have to do the firewalls.
you'd have to do one firewall down the middle.
Every 1,200 feet.
Thank you.
For a certain square footage.
So be under 25.
Could I get clarification from them? So they did propose if we did buildings under 2,500 square feet, we wouldn't have to do any sprinklers nor any firewalls. Is that correct? So I could do 2,400 square foot buildings and be completely fine.
Yep.
Yeah. That is an alternative. And by the way, if I knew this was gonna be on TV, I would have addressed it.
It's all right, we don't get much viewership. It'll start picking up, so.
What do you need from us, Mayor?
I think, do you have your direction? It sounds as though we're kind of on board with that, and then I would imagine we probably need to get those building codes brought back to us sooner rather than later, the updated ones. Or with Charlie on that, so. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks for your time, guys.
Thank
Thank you.
We will move on to the mayor's report. Just a busy week last week. We had the annual employees banquet on Friday night. And just kind of wanted to give a highlight of the nominees for our employees of the year. And that is Afton Bradley from recreational coordinator, Nicole Brown, a police detective, Gary Cunningham from our wastewater recovery facility, Jay Hackett, school resource officer, Heather Hewlin, Indianola Wellness Campus Director, Tim Little in the back, building official, Jody Ross, service tech librarian, Sam Ross, a lifeguard, Chief Brian Shear, chief, and Courtney Silliman, human resources director. Determining this year's recipients, all the nominees were reviewed by our engagement committee and selected this year's winner. It is absolutely no surprise, all of these people are great, but we were happy to give that award to Jay Hackett for all he does as our school resource officer. And he's not here tonight, but if you see him, congratulate him on that because it is a huge honor. And then after accepting that award, he went over to play in the Pacemakers versus Peacemakers game, the Granny basketball game. That was a lot of fun. We raised over $1,000 for Kilo. Spent a lot on a jersey. I outbid his wife, so I gave her the jersey though. So that was all that matters. And we learned last week, I am now a board member of the Warren County Philanthropic Partnership, and we were awarded some awards from them annually. I believe our fire department and police department have both been notified. I believe there's a Parks and Rec one too, and library. So we were handsomely taken care of. I was not on that committee. I just want to let you know, I just started. So I started at a fun time when we get an award. All of these next 2 weeks, we will award them. And now I am excited to read a proclamation for Arbor Day. Mayor's Youth Council will also be planting a tree on April 24th. We were trying to find something on either Earth Day or Arbor Day, and Wednesday seems to work best because it's Drake Relays. A lot of Mayor's Youth Council kids running a Drake Relay, so we'll be working with Parks and Rec to find a perfect place to plant a tree. And we're thankful that Ted Lair donated that to us. Proclamation for Arbor Day is whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed through the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of a precious topsoil by wind and water, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, water for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And whereas Indianola has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue its tree planting ways. Now therefore, I, Stephanie Erickson, Mayor of City of Indianola, do hereby proclaim April 28, 2024 as Arbor Day in the City of Indianola, and I urge all citizens to support efforts to care for our trees and woodlands and to support our city's community forestry programs. And further, I urge all citizens to plant a tree to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of present and future generations. Everybody plant a tree? And I did learn an interesting fact from an interesting website about it, that every portion of a tree is used when it's cut down to create paper. I did not know that. So now you all know something. To fit in your brain and take up space like mine. All right, we will move on to the public consideration under old business. We have Fair Acres Edition. I need a first and second motion on the second consideration of an ordinance to rezone property identified as Lot 3 and Lot 26 of Block M of the Fair Acres Edition from the A1 Agricultural Open Space Zoning District to R1 Single Family Residential Zoning District.
I have a question. Can we just roll that into one amendment, one to do the third reading as well? Can I make an amendment that says, or a motion to approve second reading and also third reading? Or do we have to do it separately?
I think it'd be better to pass this than just do a motion waive.
Okay. I move second consideration.
There's a second. Thank you. Any questions? See, they're ready to put the house down, so that's exciting for them. Jackie?
Councilmember Solms? Rabe?
Aye.
Dalby?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Beach?
Aye.
Richardson?
Aye.
Item B, can I get a first and second motion on a consideration waiving the third consideration of an ordinance to rezone property identified as Lot 3 and Lot 26 of Block M of the Fair Acres Edition from the A1 Agricultural Open Space Zoning District to the R1 Single Family Residential Zoning District?
So moved.
Second.
Jackie?
Councilmember Richardson?
Aye.
Solms? Aye. Rabe?
Aye.
Dalby?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Beach?
Aye.
And lastly, can I get a first and second motion on a resolution approving the final plat for Acres Second Edition?
Second.
Thank you. Jackie?
Councilmember Rabe?
Aye.
Dalby?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Beach?
Aye.
Richardson?
Aye.
Solms?
Okay, well, we will move on to the next item on our agenda is City Manager's Report.
Mayor and Council, I don't have a heck of a lot to report tonight, other than the city is beautifying, it's getting warm, everyone's out and about and enjoying our great community. Our city staff is out supporting that as well. A lot of work is going on right now with Parks and Recreation, with their public safety. Had some incidents of late, but we're glad that all of our people are safe. We also have our cleanup coming up this weekend. So even though the temperatures might cool a little bit, this is our opportunity for the community to put its best foot forward and clean up. And if you have an opportunity to volunteer and help a neighbor in need, by all means, go ahead and do so. And we'll open to any questions you might have. We do have an award coming up for the our wastewater facility. And so I'll get an email out to you, inviting you to an event where that award will be given in West Des Moines. And if you're available, we'd love to have you come to that as well.
All right. Thank you.
May I?
Yes.
I have one thing I didn't get on council, comments here. Charlie and I attended a partnership pre-meeting in Norwalk last week. I had been talking with Amanda at the chamber and Lucinda as well about trying to set up a meeting in DC with the USDA. The reason being that I attended a breakfast meeting last month and Kayakota was talking about some things and kind of sparked some thought about some of the USDA programs for animals and confinements. And so I asked the chamber about checking into seeing if we get a meeting in DC with USDA to find out if there's any funds available for Kayakota or anybody else that might happen to fall into that place. Lucinda contacted Teresa Greenfield, who is the representative for the USDA in Des Moines for this particular region. We can meet with them separately if we'd like to. We just need to have, get a meeting set up with Teresa Greenfield prior to the DC trip. We still want to meet with somebody in the USDA and DC, that's fine. But what I found out was that there is a lot of grants and funding from USDA for a number of different projects. I just see that the USDA funded a significant funding of a rural fire department for EMS and services there. There's USDA grants available for that. We still are considered a rural fire department. There's funding for libraries. There's funding for stormwater, wastewater, water systems. There's all kinds of USDA funding that we're missing out on and not really taking advantage of. So I would ask staff maybe to see if we can get a hold of Teresa Greenfield and get a meeting set up prior to us going to the DC thing.
Is
And
staff gonna go?
Charlie's going as well as Councilmember Rabe and Councilmember Richardson.
yeah,
And setting up that meeting's already in the works.
I see that we're already there. So, but the point is, I want council to understand what's going on. And I think that we've got some real opportunities here, and I think the county could do the same somewhere down the road as well.
Yeah.
No.
Perfect. Can I get a first and second motion to adjourn? Jackie? Wait, no, all those in favor. I don't have to have Jackie do it. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. We'll take about a 2-minute break and then we'll come back with a new session. You can get out with some sunlight still listening.
We made up for it on Tuesday.
Usually we don't.
Sorry. Baseball.
All right, we are in study session, April 15th.
Very good. So Mayor and Council, we've been, kind of dealing with some tough issues and budgets and everything else. And so consequently, some of our meetings have gone long, and that we understand that, and that there's going to be ebbs and flows, especially council coming on and new learning opportunities. But we've certainly talked about how we can become more efficient as a city in our running of meetings and support of the mayor and her facilitation of the meetings and whatnot. And why an efficient meeting is really important. Even though long meetings are often accepted as the norm, we need to acknowledge that drawn out meetings are bad public policy. Any thoughts on why they might be bad public policy?
We get tired.
You get tired. When you get tired, you start making rush or rash or bad decisions, right? I had one council meeting go to past 3 a.m. and we made some bad decisions. It was a hard meeting. During 2008 and the turn down of the economy and letting people go, it was a painful experience. So the more you can be prepared, the more you can be proactive, whatnot, the better off. And it's also for the sake of the public, because the public expects consistency and the public expects that if they're waiting for another agenda item to come through, that their agenda item is going to come up at an appropriate time and not 3 or 4 hours later than they expected. So obviously, an efficient meeting brings better decision-making, more uniform treatment of our residents, consistency across the board. It's also professionalism too. We're going to be going out to bid for a lot of different projects coming up, and how we interact in our professionalism that we treat with our professional service providers and the treatment of our staff and each other and the mutual respect that you have for each other all grows a vision and or image of professionalism. And if we step on that, oftentimes it makes it so people don't maybe want to do business, or they don't want to put bids in or whatnot. And so that actually raises costs on our residents in general. So it's a great professionalism. And then quality of life. You all get paid the big bucks for sitting in those chairs and staying here all night long to make those decisions. And we recognize that you have a life and you have families, and we have a life and families as well as the public that we serve. And so we want to be efficient and respectful of that time with each other. And so what has been our trend of late? Well, just in the last several weeks, since the beginning of the year, we've had some pretty long meetings, 2 hours, and those are not counting closed session times, which often go an hour or more. And some of those meetings hitting 3 hours. And so the data is really there. Now, there's a fine balance, because if you're too efficient, then the public's not even aware of what's going on. And if you go on too long, then you might be making bad decisions. So there's that correct, real good balance of making sure that we're transparent, yet efficient and effective with our time. And so we've just really been talking about what is the purpose of the meeting? It is to conduct the people's business. It is to listen to the concerns, and every decision that you will ever make always, and I don't care what it is, always comes down to one thing: the decision of the one versus the decision of the many. Whether you're passing an ordinance, a law, passing fire and the request of a developer, it's always weighing that balance. And so it becomes a very difficult thing. And so making sure that you're fresh-minded and prepared really helps you to make good decision making. So that we can safeguard the peace and tranquility of our community and protect the property values. And of course, our most essential thing, protecting life. So how do we improve that quality? We should always be asking ourselves, when a meeting runs on, is it fair to the public who wants to speak? Is it fair to the agenda petitioner? So you have the public here that's here, and maybe it goes on into different rooms. And so are we treating each one of them fairly? Are we treating the petitioner fairly, or the next petitioner in line? Oftentimes we'll maybe juggle something on the agenda to bring somebody up first because we know it's gonna go the 2 hour timeframe. But getting tired makes decision making sometimes not the best. So we want to help you in any way we can. So tips for an effective and efficient meeting would be, of course, to come prepared. The more you can read in advance, the more questions that you can ask us. We truly appreciate that the questions are often brought to us in advance so that we can do some research and we can be prepared, not in a gotcha type of sense, but we can be prepared to give you the answers in the meeting so that you can make the decisions, or in advance of the meeting to give you the decisions or the information you need to make good decisions. Of course, we are a mayor and council forum. And so we respect the mayor and her governance of the meeting. And so you can be very comfortable or we can be very formal. And there's a fine line in that because comfort allows you to have a good open dialogue, but then maybe steps on the toes of each other. And very formal is when you get into things like Robert's Rules of Order and it's a long book to read on how to run a meeting more efficiently. And so there are some tips and tricks to better support the mayor by asking for the floor and by yielding time back to the mayor for someone else to have the floor. And so that we're not stepping on each other's toes and each of you have your voice heard, each of you were elected. We often of late have had a lot of public dialogue from the floor. And that's a challenge. When somebody's not a lectern, you are disadvantaging the public at home, not being able to easily see or hear them because there's this dialogue going on. There really should be a public time and there should be a council time. And sometimes those cross over. Sometimes you're going to need to ask questions and that's okay. Then you ask the mayor to yield that time so that you can ask a question of the public. But it should not be an open dialogue. Oftentimes we stray into that because we're somewhat comfortable and relaxed, and so it's that fine balance. And that's where that next item led to is public time versus council time. When it is officially a public time, like a public hearing, we do it a little bit differently than I've done in other cities. Normally, I have not opened the public hearing until a staff report is complete. So typically, the mayor would say, Charlie, do you have a report that you gave on this agenda item coming up? Might give a quick intro and whatnot. Then there's a motion to open the public hearing. The public is the only ones allowed to speak during that time. It should not be a dialogue. Oftentimes they want to ask questions. And so I'm actively writing down the questions so I can hope to answer those questions later on. If not in the meeting, later on through email responses. But I know sometimes they feel like they just want to get an answer from you, and the tendency is to want to provide that answer. But this is the form of government we have is to let them speak, and then when that portion is over, to set that aside to let you speak and not have the public interrupt you, because oftentimes that can occur, or a sub dialogue can be going on in the back of the room, and it's not at all inappropriate for the mayor to ask our police officers to escort somebody out of the room so they can hold that conversation in a manner that's not disturbing, because more often than not, our IT folks are turning that microphone off because it's picking up people in the audience and it's overstepping so they can't hear you. So I'm not sure if you realize that. Something else to consider is the public is listening to you. And so you speaking up and speaking very loudly and clearly so they can be picked up by the microphone is very beneficial. But you speaking while someone else is speaking makes it really difficult. Or if sub conversations are going on, that can make it difficult for the public at home to listen as well. So do not speak over each other and avoid grandstanding. I know oftentimes, I don't think we do that very much here, but this came from a list of different things that, but when the camera is on, sometimes we do get in that position where we're trying to demonstrate a point to the public at large. And so to get that point out, maybe we want to go over certain things within the meeting. It's always that fine balance. Maybe people are asking questions specifically to try to drive home a point to the public at large. just be careful of that and respectful of each other in that whole process. To assist the mayor, of course, Mayor, you've got your gavel, so that's nice. That's one of your tools that you have.
It's in my purse. Yeah.
You're not gaveling in.
Glad I didn't have to use it.
But there are other tools available, some that are not very expensive. We do have software that allows for the council to actually vote and click on something, or to, if you want to raise your hand, you can raise your hand and the mayor can see your hand come up and then yield time. We can become more formal if we feel like we need to get to that point. There is equipment, not only software, but there's hardware as we consider the building of a new building that actually projects on the wall what your vote is, and you literally click on a button and the mayor can see it and yields time and can turn microphones off and bring things back and hold discussions with each other that way. And of course, becoming more familiarized with things like Robert's Rules of Order are also important, so that if this discussion is going on and on, you can advance the agenda moving forward a little bit, or call for the question, and if the consensus is there, move the discussion on and get people on to the next agenda. So those are some of the tips and tricks that we've talked about. We also talked a little bit internally about ideas for consideration. And this is really how formal or informal you want to keep it. This is the discussion portion of the meeting. Some of those ideas that we were coming up with as staff is consent agenda. I didn't read the consent agenda tonight, and I hope I didn't offend anyone by not reading it, but I tried something a little bit different by having it up on the screen, recognizing that we publish it on Thursday. It is available electronically. The public is invited. We have them printed. They are available, but oftentimes that can be a few minutes to the meeting that adds too much. We can stop for any one of these as we go along. I think I'm going on. Staff improvements, we do often put memos on many of our agenda items, but sometimes we don't. And if we have a very long item with lots of material in it, having an executive summary, 1 page at the beginning to help give you the big picture might be beneficial, not only for you as elected leaders that are intimately involved, but for the public at large, so that when they go to an agenda item, they can see it. So that's something we can take on ourselves to try to improve. Reports. One of the questions that is always asked is a meeting needed or is a report needed? If an email will do. And so that's one of the questions. I know in one location that I was at for a while in the private sector, they did Manhattan meetings. I don't know if you ever heard of a Manhattan meeting, but a Manhattan meeting doesn't allow chairs in the room. And it's just because you don't have chairs in the room, the meeting is much more efficient and you're done. Because it's not as comfortable. I make it so that you're not as hungry or hangry throughout the meeting. Maybe that keeps us here longer. I don't know. So maybe there's things that we can change as well. Another thought is we do limit the public to 3 minutes, especially when it gets controversial and not. But as the mayor is yielding time to council members, should we also hold ourselves to the same standard? And same for staff. That may be good. Other questions might need to be asked. And so, might not be a hard and fast rule, but just as a guideline.
Yeah, that'd be my concern, is sometimes older people here that are smarter than me ask questions that make me think of something else. So I just have that concern, if we limited ourselves, that we potentially eliminate some questions it could.
Yep, it's that fine line and what works.
I think honestly, I think might be more of an issue of just letting that person have the floor for a short period of time. And I don't know if there's a time limit you need to have on it, but more importantly, as the discussion moves around the room and stuff, if there's additional questions, you get one more shot at it after that. And because the problem I think we sometimes run into is that we end up having multiple discussions with, I've been in that, I've done that, and my apologies for that. But I think it's just understanding what we are intending to do here. And as far as the things that you've got up there, I understand elimination of the reading consent agenda takes maybe 5 minutes of the whole thing. I mean, that's not a big deal, or just walking through it. Executive summaries would be good. I'm still in favor of having somebody come up and give a report, even though sometimes it's things that we may or may not know. But you gotta remember that we're here for the consideration of the public as well. And by doing it in an email, even though maybe on the website, it may not be available to some of the people in the public, and that's important to me. But there's a lot of different things we can do, and having been under 5 mayors, I think it is now, everybody runs it differently. So.
I guess just to pipe up on that one real quick, I'll take my 3 minutes. Like I interpret that as it shouldn't limit us to your point. Like I hear what you're saying and I would hate for that too, but I think it's more of a conscious effort for us to not go on long monologues, right? And allow our discussion to move and allow for more questions. But I think one of the things that we get at times sideways on is we all start talking and the mayor loses control of the meeting because we just kind of throw all that out. We need to, if we're better about her to pick and choose as those questions are asked and responded to, and we watch our that can overall shave a few minutes here, a few minutes there, and make it more concise. To your point, one of the things that I know I'll lose sight of at time or just not think of in the moment is that to the point of we're doing this for the public, like we have to make clean reporting too. I mean, I worry about that every Sunday. That's one of the things I do is record a church service every Sunday. And yeah, if you don't have a clean recording, it doesn't do any good. And if we're all up here talking over each other, our microphone technology in here is not so good that it's going to make that easy to convey for those that do choose to watch. And we know that our live viewership is small, but there's quite a few that come back and watch throughout the week. So I also like the consent agenda tonight.
I like the consent agenda idea too. I think a lot of that is just, liquor licenses and renewals of things that we've already had before. And I think we've been really conscious to try to not put important items when we work through those in our meetings to no longer, don't shove things that shouldn't be on the consent agenda. Which I'm happy with how that's gone. Get back to you.
One place that I knew of had a mayor's football. It was kind of like a beanbag type of thing, and the mayor threw the football to you, you had the floor, and then you threw it back to the mayor, and the mayor threw it to the next.
I'm not athletic, so,
You're ready. I can see how that goes sometimes.
yeah. That could be interesting if you give us things to throw at each other.
So it ensures that the person who has the ball is speaking. They have the floor.
If I may, one mayor I had, you had to literally kind of not raise your hand, but just get the mayor's attention, and he would write down the name so that he had an order of who raised their hand at that particular time, and that person had the floor until they yielded it, basically by saying, "Thank you, Mayor," or my time is finished, or whatever the case is, or however you want to finish it. I had one mayor do that. We've had other mayors that the clerk oftentimes would let the mayor know who spoke, or would call on the person then at that point in time, or let the mayor know, and it's just been done differently. But I do like the idea of letting that person keep the floor, talk as long as they need to, and then, well, however long if you want to put a time limit on it, that's fine too, but then basically just let that person have the floor, and if you have questions later, you can ask those again.
I think we need some way to let the mayor know that we want to speak, because there have been times, conversations very lively, and it's hard to interject sometimes. Discussion's good.
Agree.
Yeah, and I don't want it to be lost too, that
I don't need yeah.
we've had some pretty big things this year so far that creates lively discussions, and it's been a lot of years since there's been agendas that have been as long as some of the agendas we've had too. So I don't want that to be lost on people too. Big rezonings all at the same time, yeah.
I'm sorry, you finished?
Yeah.
Do those speakers or those microphones that you had, does it have a light on the other side or something so if I push a button and want to speak, it shows that that person wants to
Actually,
speak?
the mayor has a much larger one, and it shows who wants to speak. It'll light up.
Gotcha.
Or there's software that does the same.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, Jackie, you said Civic Clerk has that option.
Those are really nice from the public perspective too, when you have those systems set up. Thing to think about going forward, and there's usually a large screen behind or one on each side, and it's trying to follow discussion and motions and who's doing what for the public. It's very, very nice.
Somebody already say this, I don't know, but I think Norwalk has a very similar setup. Really nice.
Well, IMU has the microphone thing now where they push a button.
It's just a plain mic that you can turn on and turn off. So, the only problem with that is that they often forget to turn it back on and then you can't hear them. and
Yes.
recording.
Start talking without it being recorded. I know one thing I hear a lot is the side of the room is hard to hear on the live or on the
It's hard
record.
on both sides, cause there's been times when I've watched online and I've had to message. It's hard to hear just from.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they put this in front of me because I'm notoriously bad.
yes, it's hard to hear you.
Just something, it's okay.
Other ideas? We switched our study session to be in advance of the meeting because when first arrived, oftentimes we are going through some pretty difficult issues, and by the time we got to our study session, it wasn't very productive. And so we moved them up so we could get some things taken care of, but that was great when we had a whole bunch of stuff that was in the pipeline for study sessions. Sometimes we're scrambling to try to fill that time. And so maybe the six PM time is more efficient. It was this evening. And then have the study session after or on a completely different night if you have a long agenda. That would mean an additional meeting, but more efficient meetings when you're here. Something else to consider.
On that topic, we just told it on the 4th. Because IMU met on the 3rd, we held it on the 4th day of the month. It was a study session. And those are usually limited to a number of 90 minutes or 2 hours, whatever the case was, and then there would be nights when those were canceled, or you can, now that they have their own meetings over there, I don't know how difficult it would be for us to hold a study session on the same night as IMU does, but if we could do it on the 2nd or 3rd or 4th or whatever, then be it. My thinking. And the reason for that is that you get a lot more opportunities to have folks in, and we'd have to figure out what nights they meet, whether we meet with the supervisors or whether we meet with the school board or both of those at the same time, or IMU. It gives us an opportunity to really have a little bit more of a meaty, M-E-A-T-Y meeting, I think in a lot of ways too. And I think it's a lot more productive, but night. So I don't know what people feel about that.
Kind of struggle with that, and not from like my perspective, but going into spring, summer, right? It would get really busy with young kids. And then our staff has kids, so asking them to come another night, I would much rather do it when we're already here. And I do like it afterwards as well, better. And then we don't have to call our staff back in. I know not all of our staff live here either. It's really long days when you have to do that, and I mean, I guess if we were to make that call of say do another night, I'd first want to talk to the staff and say, you know, how do you feel about this? Because maybe that's like I don't think it would be, but maybe that's a nail in someone's coffin where they're like, yeah, I'm done. I don't think they would, but you never know. It's a lot to ask another night, especially if they don't live in town and we meet later. And so what if they can't go home?
And do they all need to be here?
Very true.
Another question. If you're only on the agenda or something like that.
Yeah, very true.
So all things to consider going forward. If you're feeling like the 6 o'clock thing works, we are planning the 6 o'clock meeting for the 22nd next week, right?
I do.
And but May 6th, we already have public hearings scheduled for 7 PM. So it would have to be after the first meeting in May.
Okay.
No, I just say I agree. I like the earlier meetings, and I've thought a lot about like what Steve's brought up with separate night, and hope would be maybe if we try this for a little bit and we get a little more efficient with our meetings, that there's ample time to get through stuff in a study session after the meeting. And if in a month or two we're still not feeling like it's enough, then revisit it.
Maybe bring it back a different night then. If it doesn't work, then we Try
carry
different way.
over the consent, that continuance. Sounds good. And then the last component is if we make changes, we'd want to make sure that there's an educational component to it. And I was just looking through for some videos on things like, and Aaron showed me that we actually already have a city video. It doesn't have the audio.
Welcome to this video development. Our curriculum activities are meant to give you an opportunity to listen and speak on important issues to our community. To make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak and be heard, we can say you follow a few rules and procedures to keep things running smoothly. As resident or visitor, everyone is welcome to speak to the council. To ensure your turn to speak, fill out a card.
So they go through their own process and they have different colors and whatnot that we don't follow, but what's the moral of the story is, whatever changes we do put in place, we do want to make sure that the public is aware. So that when they come in, they're not confused about, well, how come the council's not answering my questions? You know, that's not right. They should be listening to me. Well, you are listening. You're listening by not talking. You know what I mean? So we can put some educational things about how to find our agendas, how to find our packets, how to what is the appropriate procedures that we need to follow in order for them to participate in their local government. And that was it, unless you had any questions or discussion.
I think that's great.
I do think one thing that when you talk about public comments or public meetings, if it's a staff, instead of having to have a motion right away, get into it, if we can, and gosh, it seems to me like we used to do that. We used to have the staff do the presentation and allow the public to have time to speak on a public hearing. And you would open it up at that point in time with the staff person speak, and then you make the motion, have the public hearing. And that way the public has the opportunity to actually hear what the staff is saying and can ask additional questions, and maybe we can answer those questions during the council portion of it too. I do like that idea though.
Yeah, a lot of times a staff presentation before a public hearing will answer a number of the questions, and so it takes the wind out of the sails. Like, oh,
I feel like we kind of do follow that process when we go into them. Usually Charlie has to come up and speak and then we, open it to the public.
we do, and it might be a law issue in Iowa. We just happen to open the public hearing. And we don't actually listen to the public at that point. It's just kind of a timing thing. Normally, you would turn it over to staff, let them talk, and then, okay, now we're gonna open the public hearing. We're gonna be quiet.
Unless the law changed, we didn't used to do that. Used to be they used to have the public, have the staff make their presentation and the public could speak on after the motion.
At the end of the day, and I think I've shared this joke before, staff, we're the staff, we're not the council. We're not here to tell you what to do. Council, you're the council, you're not the mayor. Mayor, you're the mayor, you're not God. Everybody knows their lanes and what role they're in. We all respect each other. The meetings will be great. We'll support the staff we serve, or the public we serve.
I'm all for anything that gets in.
Let's go enjoy some weather.
A little bit, I agree with Steve. We've had a lot of topics and a lot of important topics. We've had which is a good thing because it means our community is lively. We have a lot going on. I a little bit enjoy the conversation because a lot of times I don't like to speak first. I'd rather let it sink in, and then that's just how I process information, right? So, but if we want to limit it to 3 minutes, that's fine. I'm also a chameleon. I can blend in with the best of them. That's the goal. So
I don't think we have to limit it. We're just conscious and, and yeah. And I try to be conscious to make sure everybody speaks before we go to vote. Like I'm trying to do that a little bit going down the line. New points.
when I ran, I didn't ran on the premise of we need to be out of here in 30 minutes. Everything's fine, but I ran so that we could have healthy conversations, which I don't feel was the case before. So I'm silent through our meeting. I know a lot of people aren't. Honestly, a 3-hour meeting is 5 hours. I go home and got to unwind for a couple hours, right? Before. So, but you're not the only one. So I understand people's view, but that's just my take on it. So.
I agree. I think I like the opportunity to discuss things because that discussing things is how my decision has sometimes changed. I mean,
And I would agree,
You know.
you know, through healthy conversation,
Yeah,
it has
hear
changed.
other people's perspectives and things like that, but I think, you know, you do make a good point that there is a way to do that effectively. I think tonight's meeting kind of showed, you know, Stephanie kind of made sure like, hey, you were saying something, you know, and going back and forth, and I think that really helped.
And Melissa's point too, just that everyone should be heard, not.
Right.
The agenda was nowhere near.
No. It was a good.
Let's be real, I mean, you can just, like we've had, you're gonna get a 3-hour meeting and like Ron said, if it's 3 hours.
Yeah, we could avoid having 3 hearings in one meeting.
I think the open dialogue and the discussion is important for the public to understand maybe why we vote a certain way. And if you just show up and vote through every agenda item, they don't understand. And we all got elected to do a job. Letting them hear what's on your mind and why you voted a certain way is important, I guess.
Every organization is somewhere on the spectrum, and you just, whatever's most comfortable for you and mutually respectful for each other.
All right. Okay, well, everybody have a good night. Thank you. Hey.
I thought there was 2 things on the study session.